I'm showing 5:59, so we'll probably be right there when it hits 6.
Okay.
Are you ready for the presentation?
Okay, are we all set?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It is 6 o'clock and we'll call the February 23rd meeting of the Plan Commission to order. And I will ask staff to take a quick roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Rossi Menka,
Aye.
Amanda Nowak, Eric Torkelson,
Here.
David Rashka,
Here.
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Kathleen Dagenhart,
Here.
Jessica Katzenmeyer,
Here.
Brian Frank.
Here.
Good, we have a quorum.
Excellent.
Mayor, sorry, I didn't mean to exclude you. Mayor Devine, check you out.
Figured you knew I was here.
Yeah.
So then we'll move on to item C, approval of the minutes from our meeting on January 26th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I heard a motion from
Eric Torkelson.
a second by Brian Frank. I don't know if there was anything louder in the room, but any changes or adjustments to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, the minutes are approved. We will move on to item D, and I will go to items 2A and 2B.
Thanks, Mayor. First item is Trinity Church. Pastor Coble is here with us this evening, and they are an existing church and formerly had an elementary school within the building, which started in about 1966 as a Sunday school and then grew into a first kindergarten through early elementary school within the neighborhood. And they're proposing a high school. And it's going to be a small offering at first, and it could potentially grow to up to 50 students over time. But this would be a high school. And just the picture here that we see in the lower left corner is the existing facility at 68th and Arthur, just directly south of the new West Dallas, West Milwaukee recreation facility, which is, would be working in cooperation with the school to offer some recreational opportunities for school kids and teachers alike within the community, obviously. So schools are considered a special use within our zoning ordinance, and the property is zoned RB2 residence district, again, which allows schools as special uses. So the picture in the upper right is going back to like 1951, and it's just started out primarily as a church at that time. And then over time in 1970 is another aerial image. You can see where they added the school on the north side of the building. And that's pretty much the way it's been since, maybe with some minor changes, garages and so on. But the school and church are the same building. What's proposed here in the next slide shows a floor plan. This is a floor plan that was presented to the city back in like about 1970 when they put the classroom additions on. And those classrooms, which were schools prior, are going to be schools once again. It took a little hiatus in 2011 or so. It ceased being a school, and since it's been more than 12 months, our zoning ordinance says that you have to reinstate it as a school in terms of zoning, and just go through the formal process of a public hearing and plan commission review and so on. So our next step will be a common council meeting. But you can see here, it's roughly about 6,500 square feet of classroom area. There is in the lower level or the ground level, you have the classroom areas, which are a little bit more of a flexible space where you have movable walls within that larger area where it says classrooms 2920 square feet. And then there are actual walls in the classrooms, the 724 square foot classroom area. And there's a church hall on the ground floor. On the image floor plan on the right, sort of a mirror image of additional flexible space classrooms in that upper first floor area, and then the church. So that's the setting of where these would take place. Again, just a sort of a small offering to begin, a small, about 10 kids in the high school, and then it would grow potentially to 50 after that. There are no alterations proposed as part of this offering, and they'd be just basically reoccupying the former classroom space for the high school. Students are going to be arriving via private vehicle, or if they're fortunate enough to live close enough, they get walking. But we see this as primarily just a private being dropped off at the facility. No busing or anything like that is proposed. There's really not going to be a school meal program yet. I guess within this facility, it's going to be brown bag, bring your own throughout the day, and they do have refrigeration on site. The intent is also, I think you're going to say it's opening fall, but it's the fall of 2023 would be the first opening date. In the upper right, just a bird's eye aerial image of roughly where the school would be within the building. So we're recommending approval subject to the additions in the staff report. And there are, the two, the first being that we're looking for a couple plan changes just to update, indicate some fence repairs along the alley behind the building. There's a fence line. I go to this image here. But there's a fence line. This is a fenced in grassed area back here, and there's a fence line here. It's been wore out a little bit over time, and it's going to be replaced as part of the new school coming in. Pastor's working on getting some bids for the various conditions that we're recommending here. And the other part is just a refuse location and screening being offered. Again, sort of along that alley frontage, there is an existing dumpster refuse area. We're just asking for that to be enclosed within a 4-sided enclosure. That detail being provided to city staff. But aside from that, the standard is that our next step would be to go before County Council on March 15th, and for a public hearing. Property owners within 200 feet are notified of this hearing. They attend that meeting as well to voice any comments or support. With that concludes my presentation. Pastor Cobles here. Any other questions? But yeah.
Mr. Mayor, a question for the pastor. Why the delay until 2023 to open?
Because I'm finishing a PhD and serving 2 churches, and I got to have time to be able to get support for the school and get students in. So the delay is happening because we have a new pastor coming in that will take care of the day-to-day pastoral duties. He's finishing seminary right now, so he'll arrive in June. That'll give me a year to be able to go to the other congregations and to meet with other people where I'm not solely responsible for all of the church functions at those times.
Thank you. I move approval.
Thank you.
Discussion. Oh, we got a second, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Wayne Clark, second by, I believe, Kathleen Degenhart. Any other discussion?
Alderman Rowe.
Okay.
Alderman Rowe.
Where does the northern city limits start?
Yeah, so the city limit is the south yard.
I live in the house immediately to the right. So the
Okay.
house is Milwaukee and the church is West Dallas.
Because I always was under the impression that it was Arthur, and that's my aldermanic district. And there's a couple houses on 69th
Yeah.
and 70th that there's one house
Right.
into Milwaukee. Well, it's actually into West Dallas
Right.
because it's our, okay, are the Milwaukee people notified as well about this, Steve, or is it just
We
the
do,
West Dallas folks?
Yeah, I mean, it's primarily West Dallas folks that will get the mailer, but the city, I guess, clerk's office of Milwaukee is notified. So
Okay.
if they choose to. And we are publishing it in the official paper. as well,
Okay.
so-
And I can always call my alderman
Yeah.
also and let him know what's going on just to cut him into the loop.
That's our good friend Mark, correct?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. I can call Mark. No problem.
If I could get these questions answered here, please. I would typically ask taxable value and jobs, obviously no taxable value. How many teachers,
So to start off with, because it's such a small school, I'll be headmastering and teaching. So if you're not familiar with classical education, it's split up into what's known as the trivium and quadrivium. The trivium is what you normally associate with your humanities, right? So grammar, rhetoric, and logic. I'll teach all of those because I have the background to do so. We'll hire in one other teacher to do the math and science because that's not my shtick. So we'll start off with 2. As that grows, Concordia University in Mequon has a classical educator training program. So as we go, we'll be pulling not only as student teachers to help us during this time and to give them student teaching because there's not a lot of classical high schools around to do that. But then we can hire from those folks as well to be able to fit the growth. So 2 to start off with, and then as we grow, then we can have teachers specialized depending on the number of children.
So, and then the other thing, when it was a non-high school, I assume none of the students drove.
Correct.
I'm gonna assume that things being the way they are today, high school students will
Yeah.
have their own cars.
Right.
I don't know how densely, I'm not the pro parking lot guy.
Sure.
You know, but I'm just wanna make sure, especially with the rec department, I don't think the rec department parking lot is oversized either.
It's not, no.
Yeah, so there's already some parking pressure in the
Yeah,
community.
so they're speaking as someone who, I mean, I literally live right here, right? So during the day, nothing is happening here and here at all.
That's all wide open?
It's all
typically?
wide open,
Okay.
right? And
And
so
evenings, I imagine the rec center gets.
the evenings for sure. And then we see a lot more traffic after about 5 p.m. For us as well out there. I've got a great relationship with the rec center. I was the vice president of West Allis's Little League, and we worked with them talking about relationships with baseball to serve the community. And so they've been phenomenal. They've said, if you need to park here during the day, it's not that full. So there's wonderful kind of crosstalk support with us and the rec league. Plus, like I said, there's nothing along there and they can park in front of my house and things like that too. And now that the bus stop is gone outside of the fire hydrant that's here, there you can park pretty much all the way up to the curb.
Okay, and that Milwaukee neighborhood is driveways or alleys?
Primarily driveways.
Primarily driveways,
Yeah,
okay.
but
Okay.
yeah, primarily driveways along 68. I think we're one of the there's only one house that I think of on this corner right here that doesn't have a driveway, that's alley parking on, but most of them are driveways.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Any
sorry,
other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Brian.
and this is just more of a curiosity thing. Is this a private school or is it gonna be, is it like a part of a charter school from a bigger community or? That's, I was just curious.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Brian. It is a private school, so it'll be a classical Lutheran school, and I'm LCMS. So, I mean, that's in terms of flavor of theology, that would be the flavor. But we're open to serving whomever wants to go. Our goal is to be able to offer, obviously for parental choice and things like that, you have to be open for 3 years before I can apply for those things. But our goal is to eventually be able to offer parental choice and those types of things. So while it is certainly self-serving to the church, my hope is that it'll also be serving to the community as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? We do have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And I will vote aye as well, and the ayes have it, and the motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And then we will move on to item 3, and I'll turn it over to staff.
Thanks, Mayor. Julian Kegel of Kegel's Inn is proposing a lot consolidation. This would consist of a parking lot that they own as well as the restaurant and inn at 5901 National Avenue. As you know, they also currently own half of the street, 59th Street, a portion of it. That's that little appendage right over here. Right here. So here's the parking lot, here's the inn. And then here's the street that they currently own. That's the current lot configuration. What they're doing is just consolidating these 2 lots into one. Give them a little bit more flexibility in the future in terms of what they do on the property. It also limits a standalone lot. You know, they currently have a standalone parking lot. So in our opinion, just based on the direction they're going, the things that they want to offer as new owners, Julian's a new owner of the facility. We support this lot consolidation. Our next step would be to go to the Common Council on March 1st, this next Tuesday, and have to go before council for review. It's not a public hearing, but it does require council approval.
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, do they own?
Go ahead, Brian.
Do you own both? Do they own both lots already?
Yeah, they do, both the parking lot and the restaurant lot. Yes.
I mean, I move approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on item 3? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we will do items 4A and 4B.
Thanks, Mayor. This next item is Paul and Christine Budiak are proposing a special use for a property they own on 1416 South 81st Street. This is a duplex property. It came before the Plan Commission last year and also subsequent to council for special use hearing. Council held action on it. And they just, because it was so close to the end of the license term, so Mr. Budiak and Christina had a license that was granted for a temporary extension of premise, and it expired in early September, September 6th, 2021. Since it was so close to the end, council just held action on that. What they're coming back with is just sort of to try again to, with the ban in summer's going to happen again, we hope. And looking ahead, Budiaks want to schedule the bands and get the music lined up for the outdoor stage and live music events. So this is an example of what was last year, and they'd like to put the tent back in the same location on the duplex property between the existing garage and the duplex, so that it could be used, for live events. This would not include alcohol service, so that middle bullet point, the licensed extension of premise will be on the Paulies pub property just to the north of that duplex. The duplex will just remain a duplex, but with the added flexibility of allowing an accessory commercial use, in this case, a tent and stage for live music. And it's just an aerial view showing the yellow area on top is the Paulies pub property. That's the licensed premise. And then the red dashed area is the duplex. And then, duplex fronts 81st, and then the garage is further back under that tree in the back of the site on the east side. The tent and stage would be right in between the garage and the duplex. So there are different options that the Budiaks have explored, and with the city, with older persons, and but taking a look, if not the proposal before us to put the tent and stage on the duplex property, they could put the tent and stage on the actual licensed Paulies premise property. There's some concerns with that in terms of noise levels and so on. The way they've got it, the way they'd like to set it up on the duplex property focuses the sound emissions towards Greenfield Avenue and the State Fair Park, which we feel, and Paulies feels is less of a nuisance and less of a problem for the surrounding neighbors. The second option is what they're applying for the special use, to put the tent stage on the duplex property. And then the third option would be to tear down the duplex, combine it with that of the Paulies pub property, and then thereby putting the tent where they have it now, or where they would like to put it, more or less. So we're picking option B, and that's the purpose of tonight's hearing. With their application, they've submitted this list of proposed dates that they'd like to have events. So there are roughly about 30 events between May and September of 2022 that they'd like to have. The hours, they're looking at a range of hours here on Fridays, 6 to 10 p.m., Saturdays, 4 to 8 p.m., Sundays, 3 to 7 p.m., And then there's some holidays which fall on a Monday between 3 and 7 p.m. But so all the lists are, and then it's hard to see here, but some of these in yellow, highlighted in yellow here, they're listed here as event dates, but those will be not, there will be no outdoor band during those dates. So there's all the rest, what these add up to minus these yellow highlighted dates here are 30 events, and in total, the yellow ones again are no outdoor band. Just a review of what was allowed last year in September of, between May and September of 21. They were also, the Paulies Pub property was offered a license extension of premise. And there is quite a bit of scrutiny that the License and Health Committee does put on a licensed premise. They were granted only a certain amount of events per week, 4 weekly events between 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And while 4 were granted by this license in 2021, the applicant, Paulie and Christine, only had 3 per week. They were also regulated in terms of, by the health department in terms of sound emissions. They were limited to a max of 100 decibels at 100 feet away. And the health department did go out and check that from time to time. And they were always within the limit. And then there were also porta potties, one of which was ADA accessible, and wash stations provided adjacent to the Paulies Pub site. So all of that's on the Paulies Pub property, and that's what this license was governing. The same thing's going to happen again. You know, the Boudiacs will apply for a similar temporary extension of the Class B premise on their Paulies property that will not extend over to the duplex property. So you can't be drinking a beer or a cocktail on the duplex property. All of that activity would take place on the bar property. But there would still be these rules that would be tied to the use in terms of the number of events and when those occur, as well as the sound decibels. So while zoning is, you know, what am I looking for? The path to having a tent and stage on the duplex property, the licensing component before the city council is going to govern exactly the hours and times and amenities that can be offered and when. There have been some site improvements. The garage on the site has been re-sided and a new fence has been installed, basically extending from the Paulies Pub property south to the field trip property. And they're planning, I guess the purpose of this is to install a tent stage on the duplex property, and it would look very similar to that. So there are a couple things, you know, we're recommending common council approval. This would have to go before the common council on March 15th. And then I guess just to best sync the two processes, the zoning process, the special use process that is, and the licensing process, the extension of licensed premise. They would have to apply for a license extension of premise through the clerk's office, and those two could hopefully coincide on March 15th if council so desires to, you know, approve the license. That's my presentation. Paul and Christine are here. Any questions? Anything I missed? Clarifications? Questions? Yeah.
Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor,
Steve. Brian,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
was there anyone else?
Yes, I just had a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, was there any noise complaints at all at the time that they were out there? That in 21?
Yeah, I mean, there were, I mean, we did receive, the clerk's office did receive some complaints from the neighborhood. And in response to that, I mean, I think it was, you know, planning met out there with the elder persons to talk about, well, what's the best location for a band, a stage, a tent. And I think what was determined was that on the duplex property, or at least if you can face that stage and tent towards Greenfield Avenue in the State Fair Park, that is the best scenario for mitigating, you know, sound into the neighborhood.
The duplex, is that being also, that's also being rented then too, is that correct?
Yeah, so it's owned by the Boudiaks, but they are renting the duplex,
So
correct?
is there any problem with that stage being right by the back door there, or?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, Paul, Christina.
Yeah, when we signed up, any tenants, they knew that garage and that area would have to be used for obviously different things. We have like a 6-foot path so they can have an egress to get in and out the back door. And there are 2 entrances to the front door. So it hasn't been an issue. We've done it there a couple of years. The garage on the north side or the east side and the duplex on the west side blocks and pushes the sound towards State Fair. And we have the 2 parking lots to the south of there, or to the south of there. And we also have Field Trip. So for safety and for ease, that way too, our parking lot, there's an even flow to get in and out of our parking lot on 81st Street and on Greenfield.
Okay, I move approval.
I believe we have a couple of questions over in here as well.
Thank you. I'm watching the pan across the room. So Steve, if you just want to call on anybody with questions, are they commissioners or are they in the audience?
Wayne Clark, yeah, Commissioner, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hitchhike on Brian's comment. Seems to me that last time we had this before us, there was the question about noise. I understand the restrictions built into this. However, who are the aldermen that represent this area?
It's Alderman Weigel and Stefanski, I believe.
And would you care to share your view?
Well, I was preparing to, yes. I guess I had a question. First of all, I didn't have any calls about it this last summer. There is that rooming house just to the east of the Boudiak property. And I think there was one gentleman, and I don't know if and it was really a timing issue about how late the music was going, especially on Sundays. But I think I guess my question is, if they substantially run the same arrangements that they did last year, this year, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. And this isn't like a stepping stone. I mean, I don't have a problem with mixed use properties. I've lived in one for 41 years, but you're gonna, and it's gonna stay residential, the use of the property itself beyond where the stage is, and if you want to make a change to it eventually, I don't see a problem with that, but let's cross that bridge. But I would say that if they run essentially the same operation they did last year, I can't speak for Tracy, but I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Thanks, Alderman Weigel. I'll give a second to this motion.
Hey, were there any other questions?
I believe we did have a couple other questions.
David Rushka.
Yeah, and I apologize if I missed it, but how long is this approval good for?
Well, what
Just around 12
the
months,
applicant
was
is,
this
requesting is like sort of May to September, I think 18th, I think it was.
Yeah, what we try to do is tie in, because we don't want the tent up all year. Obviously, we gotta rent it, so it's a cost. Plus for looking at the neighborhood so people don't see it all the time, that's why it's hidden. But it would be the day before we would start till the day after we finish. And because we're trying to coincide the special use permit with it, so that safety and
Licensing and all.
what's the other one?
Safety and development and
Safety and
licensing.
development can piggyback on that and say, Paul, you can only use it this much. So we want to tie everything together and streamline it.
Thank you. Any problem, Rusty? No?
They were answered.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. That's it for questions, Mayor.
Okay, then we do have a motion and we do have a second. If there's no other discussion, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, I'll vote aye as well. Motion carries. And then we'll move on to item 5.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If possible, could we also consider the supplemental agenda items at the same time?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So this is our fifth item and our supplemental item. So this is the ordinance to repeal and recreate the city zoning code, and then the ordinance to repeal and recreate this official zoning map. We presented an overview of this to you at the January Plan Commission meeting, and tonight we're seeking your recommendation for approval. The timeline will be that on March 15th at the Common Council meeting, there'll be a public hearing held, and then Common Council will vote to approve the updated zoning code and zoning map. Originally, we thought we might be able to consider them as one item, and after talking with the attorney's office, we did have to split them into two separate items. So that's why the little late administrative change there. Yes.
After you presented to us, you presented to the Common Council,
Yes.
and were there changes made as a result of that?
Yes, there were, and we will get into that right now. We're going to review it. And that there was a Safety and Development Committee meeting held on February 8th. Four kind of key topics were touched on: home occupations, the kind of missing middle housing that we talked about, automotive use restrictions in the C2 district, and then afterwards we also talked about small restaurants, that was not held at the Safety and Development Committee meeting, but we communicated with the Common Council after. And let's get into that there. So the first thing that we discussed was home occupations. We have proposed an update to what we had originally. We're going to be dividing home occupations into two different types. There would be one called home office and one called home business. Home office would be any home occupation where there's no clients visiting the house and there's no packages shipped out from the site. Home businesses then would apply to any other home occupation. So the intent is for those kind of no impact uses that many people may be doing right now as they're working from home. We don't want that to be, we want that to be a permitted use. You don't need a permit to do that. So that's going to be a much, an easier thing to do. And then the home business would be considered a limited use. A permit would be required, and then there's a set of standards that must be met. So the standards we drafted with the attorney's office and that the Common Council voted on a survey after the Safety and Development Committee meeting in favor of is that it would be by appointment only. There should not be any appointments outside of 10 p.m. or at night, basically 10 p.m. through 6 a.m. The location, it must be conducted completely within the buildings, not out in the yard. You cannot use a shipping service from the dwelling unit, so we don't want somebody to be having lots of package people coming and shipping out items from their site. They need a home business permit. The principal building cannot have more than 2 dwelling units, so this would only be for single family and duplexes. You may not employ any person who does not reside on the premises. Cannot use more than 25% of the floor area of the principal building, and then there should not be any vehicles used unless they're owned by the permitted business and they're legally parked on the premises. So you can't have a fleet of vehicles essentially. The second item we talked about was missing middle housing, and so this is when we were considering different types of housing that could be allowed in the RA districts. Generally, the council did not want to allow 3 and 4 unit dwellings in RA districts, but there was kind of a split with some support for doing this in the RA3 district specifically. So we followed up with the Common Council members and had an online poll, and where we asked them whether they would support allowing duplexes as a permitted use in the RA3 district. Again, we had kind of a split down the middle of the council. But staff is going to include this in our zoning code update. We believe this is a positive change that would allow for more variety of housing choices, and it also improve conformance in this RA3 district that already has a number of duplexes as seen below. Some examples. Next, we discussed automotive use restrictions with them in the C2 district, former neighborhood commercial district. The Common Council members pretty much unanimously supported restricting motor vehicle service. I think there might have been a couple dissenters. The preferred option was to not allow auto repair shops in the C2 district on lots that were sharing lot lines with residential properties. So if they are in the C2 district, they'll have to be somewhat separated from the residential property. Otherwise, if it meets that condition, it would be allowed as a conditional use. So it still have to go through the planning commission and common council public hearing process. This would currently about 20% of auto repair shops in the city would become non-conforming.
Steve,
Oh, yeah. Question.
Mayor. Could you please explain the alley thing again?
Yes, so we presented the council with two options for how to restrict auto repair in this district. One of them was basically, the one that they chose is it has to share a lot line with the residential property. So if there's an alley separating the residential property from the business, it would still be allowed. The second option we offered was even if it shares an alley, it would not be allowed. And that one had a greater impact on, making more auto repair shops non-conforming. And I believe council didn't want to we didn't want to overly restrict them in that district. So we went with just that if they directly share a lot line.
I have a question.
Yes.
What are we doing for these businesses that park the vehicles in the alley?
That's
Is
an
that not-
enforcement issue that,
Okay.
yeah,
So
that ends up
that's
becoming an enforcement
legal.
issue right away, yeah, because
Okay.
that's not even allowed, yeah, right, yeah.
And so the second part of this is that we also discussed whether we should restrict fuel sales on gas stations in the C2 district. And the council pretty much unanimously agreed that we should not restrict them in the C2 district, primarily because those kind of convenience stores that are associated with them are often kind of benefits for the neighborhood. And there's some benefits too to being able to have something like that close to your neighborhood, close to your house, so you can reach those within walking distance, so that you can fuel up your car close to your home. So that was the direction council wanted to go with that. So there will not be any additional restrictions in C2 for gas stations. They'll still be a conditional use as they currently are. And then the last kind of major item from that was small restaurants. And so this came up slightly after our safety and development committee meeting, but we followed up with all the council members about this. And the kind of impetus for this was that the Ethiopian coffee shop that you guys approved last month is an example of a small restaurant that really doesn't have a major impact on neighbors, and it kind of has to go through this burdensome process to get approved, having to go through planning commission and common council. So we posed this question to the council members: should all restaurants go through this conditional use process? And we wanted them to consider smaller restaurants, things less than 2,000 square feet. And here's some examples: the coffee shop, Chef Paws, I think I misspelled there, Wild Roots. Those are all examples of these kind of smaller types of restaurants that would be then we would consider them as a permitted use. There are still some larger restaurants such as the Bake Sale, Double B's, Buffalo Wild Wings. Those would still have to go through the special use process. And through our poll, the common council members strongly agreed with supporting this change. And so in our new proposed update, restaurants that are less than 2,000 square feet would be a permitted use in all the same districts that restaurants currently are. And just a note that if something were to have a drive-through, it would still have to get that conditional use permit, because that's still conditional use as an accessory use. Then just some other changes that we've made, discussing, especially specifically with the attorney's office, and then just our own internal updates. We've made some revisions to the first section, administration. You also notice that the numbers it'll now be chapter 19, not 12. We updated some definitions and kind of removed some unnecessary language that conflicted or that could pose a conflict with the state statute. So we'll just be referencing the state statutes instead. And then our structure regulations, we updated this table slightly from what we showed you last time. We will be kind of separating this into a little more readable format here. So the first part will be about the buildable space on a lot. So if somebody comes and they want to look at what they can do on their lot, they'll find their zoning district, and then they'll see, okay, this is the space I can actually build out. So it has the maximum height. So for each district, this lists the maximum height allowed. And then it has the maximum set, or the minimum, typically minimum setbacks. We have a maximum front setback for some of our commercial districts here and our kind of smaller residential districts. And then they'll be able to kind of see that specific area which they can build in. You'll note that the manufacturing districts, we do not have a maximum height on. So that kind of the size of those will be regulated a little bit more by the floor area ratio. We wanted to move in this direction where we have a maximum height, because that's a lot clearer for architects, for people moving in. It's just much more simple, straightforward regulation that kind of gets to the point. Floor area ratio is a very kind of confusing.
You gotta do math.
You gotta do some math, exactly. And so we wanted to give the manufacturing places the flexibility to, if they have certain elements that have to be tall, we want to give them the flexibility. So we're going to continue to use the floor area ratio for those, but otherwise we will be using a height requirement. So that pretty much sums up those changes there. We also have, like, you know, our lot width and some other density requirements separated out just for ease of reading. Since our last meeting, we also sent out a public survey. We've had over 140 responses so far. Just kind of brief summary of the types of people who responded. We've had most of them over 40 years old, 82%. So this is something we're still gathering some data on this, and we've been reaching out to younger audiences, specifically schools. We didn't have many people under 20 years old. So we're trying to kind of continue to get a better sampling of the city in this survey. We do mostly residents, 92%. We have a small amount of visitors, but also some property owners who maybe don't live in the city, but they own property. And we see it's fairly balanced across the different aldermanic districts. Districts 3 and 4 are a little bit more represented in this survey than the other districts, though. So just a summary of some of the things we asked them about housing types and ADUs. There was kind of a mixed response to these. Generally, maybe very slightly in favor, but there wasn't a very clear trend. We think that probably some additional information about ADUs might have been helpful to have people, give them a better understanding of what those are. There was just strong support for limiting some automotive uses from locating next to residential properties. 65% of respondents favored that change. Just a sampling of some of the comments, some good ones we found. One resident said that there's no reason we should be allowing huge parking lots to be built or strip malls that are set far back from the road. These are some of the changes that our parking regulations and our new setback requirements will work to address. We also see somebody saying, I'm in favor of increased housing density and ensuring that people have access to affordable homes for rent. I believe that lots zoned as single family should have the option to be multifamily or duplexes. So there are some people in support of that. We also see with the fourth comment, some people do not want to see larger housing types on that residential land zone for single family housing. So there's a little bit of split in the community there. And then we also have one commenter saying that they want us to enforce strong standards for businesses and homeowners to make the city more beautiful. Here's an example. We had a visual preference survey in which we shared a variety of pictures of different properties with the survey respondents. The image on the top was the highest rated image for being the most attractive type of look. This kind of reminiscent of our more downtown, smaller setbacks, no parking lots, etc. Then the lowest rated image was this large blank parking space or parking lot with a big box store. So kind of affirming our ideas to kind of move in that direction where we are going to be having as much parking and encouraging buildings closer to the street and such. And so then the second part of this item tonight, the supplemental item is to repeal and recreate the official zoning map. There's no changes with this since we last met. Here's just a summary of the residential districts that we'd be consolidating. RE would be moving into RA. RA2 would stay the same. RA3 and 4 would be combined with just RA3. The RBs would be combined and RCs would be combined. And then with our overlay districts, we'd be simplifying it to have just one single overlay district instead of 3 different ones, which are kind of redundant. So that pretty much sums up the changes we had since our last meeting. Planning commissioners, if you have any questions, or anybody else in the audience as well, we can open up to discussion.
Thank you.
Looking for a motion,
Yes.
2 motions or 1?
Ideally we do.
I think we could do one. If Mayor, is that correct that we could just do one motion?
I'm looking at the.
I think we've got them split out. I mean, one is a supplemental item and the other is item 5. So the supplemental item is the zoning map and then 5 is the ordinance, the code.
But they're both listed as ordinances, correct?
They're both ordinances. So, I mean, just for
Why don't we?
Zach gave the presentation all in one bundle, but I mean, maybe it's best to do them separately.
That's what I was going to say, just to be safe with it.
Sure.
So would you state the first motion?
Okay, yes, the ordinance to repeal and recreate the city zoning code. Motion to, Not quite sure.
We're
We recommend
recommending
approval.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on item 5. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And would you
Anybody
state the motion
opposed?
for number 2?
Okay, that item 5 is carried. Chair votes aye as well. And item supplemental, item 1.
Ordinance to repeal and recreate the official zoning map, and we recommend approval.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that item? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And I will also vote aye, and the motion carries. Who wants to be the lucky one to make the motion to adjourn?
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I had a discussion earlier today with Steve, and I just want to follow through on that discussion and have it done publicly. For years, probably 20 years, this body has requested a tracking system. And about a year or two ago, Steve had a person on his staff who was really caught up in that and made great progress. But she left, and we don't have a tracking system that I'm aware of. I haven't seen it. And I think the council, or maybe this body, should be made aware of where things stand. Stuff gets lost, as you know, because we say we're going to follow up in 30 days or 90 days or whatever. And that doesn't get done, or at least it doesn't come back to this body. And so my request is, as we talked, for you to come forth with an updated schedule on where these projects stand at the next meeting.
We'll do that, Wayne. Yeah, and Erin Scharf had left. She had taken another position, but we still are monitoring and tracking, building permits, signage permits, and so on. We also have a new platform we're launching, which we hope will replace our Excel spreadsheet tracking system and our BP Logix occupancy permit system. It's gonna be called OpenGov, and we've rolled out sign permitting on OpenGov right now, as well as our planning application, and occupancy permits are close behind. So it's going to help us and other staff, we feel, quite a bit in not only doing our jobs, but also helping our customers, the applicants, also track where they're at in the system. After they submit a permit to us, they get feedback from us, and they can kind of see along the way where they're at and how many steps they have left. So that we can certainly give you a report on that at the next meeting.
Thank you. I think it was Eric who was brought up the point a year or so ago about, will we as commissioners have access to this information? Will we be able to get into the system and look at it?
You want to approve permits?
Pardon me?
Mayor, what do you think?
I don't know if they want to approve permits.
We can talk to Tony. Are you on the? I think Tony was with us for a little bit. He may have had to step away, but Tony's been our planning guru in terms of OpenGov, and I can broach that with Tony, Mayor and Rebecca, just to see if that's something that if planning commissioners could have like a read-only version, or at least have access to sort of see what's in the queue, so to speak, at any given moment.
Or monthly report.
Sure.
Yeah, that's another thing.
I know we can do reports. I mean, we can do reports in the system, and we can have that, share that with planning commission. And if there's something specific, you want us to, call us, let us know, and we can report out on it specifically too at the meeting, or any time for that matter.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
I
All right.
think that we go home.
I was gonna say,
I
what
second we go home.
motion after the motion to adjourn do we have?
Watching on YouTube.
Yeah, this is our comic book, yeah.
Does anybody want to second the motion to go home?
Me, I'll second the motion to go home.
You're already home. All in favor?
You do it.
All right.
Sure.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.